Good evening and welcome to Doctors on Call. I'm Dr. Mary Owen, Associate Dean of Native American Health and Director of the Center for American Indian and Minority Health at the University of Minnesota Medical School. I'm also a family physician for the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa. I'm your host for our program tonight on Indigenous health. The success of this program is very dependent on you, the viewer, so please call in your questions or email them to ask@pbsnorth.org. The telephone numbers can be found at the bottom of your screen. Our panelists this evening include Ricky Defoe, Elder and Pipe Carrier in Ojibwe Country, Roxanne DeLille, Dean of Indigenous and Academic Affairs at Fond du Lac Tribal and Community College, and Arnie Vaino, MD, Family Physician at the Mary Owen Clinic on the Fond du Lac Ojibwe Reservation. Our medical students answering the phones tonight are Justin Buren from Prague, Minnesota, Aura Raymond from St. Louis Park, Minnesota, and Sophie Wang from Springfield, Missouri. And now on to tonight's program, Indigenous Health. So this is the second time we get to do this. Thank you all for being here. I'm glad that people wanted us to come back up with this show, so it's incredibly important. We're talking about it more and more. We're now teaching Indigenous health in our medical school to our students, to all of our students, but in particular, there's particular interest by Native students, but also faculty now these days, and the general public, I find. So. Roxanne, we'll start with you. When we say Indigenous health, what is that? What do we mean in your mind? And there's lots of different ways to think about this.
Yeah, health is such a big topic too. It seems like it's all over the place right now. Excuse me. I think for us it's more of a holistic. It's not just a physical type of health that we're concerned with. It's mental health, spiritual health. There's the physical aspect of it, but that's only a part of it. So it's this holistic kind of view of what is healthy.
And Arnie, you've been trained in both Western medicine and you also practice our traditional ways, or the traditional ways of the Ojibwe. So how do you see it? Do you see it the same, or is there anything you was?
No, when I went to medical school 2.5 decades ago, I assumed that it was 4 years of so much information that it just gets all packed together and you come out like a hay bale on the end. Everything's exactly the same. And I was pretty pleased to find out that's not true. And then once I started on the Fond du Lac Reservation, getting to know Ricky and Roxanne and other traditional people, it really brought out that part of me as a physician. And that's an important part, maybe the biggest part of it.
Practicing some traditional medicine as well? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, practicing, traditions. I don't do traditional medicine as a practitioner, but I certainly talk to patients about traditions and the importance of ceremony, and I do ceremonial things myself that are important to me.
And do you talk to all patients about traditions, or how do you find out if they're interested? Because not all patients are part of the.
Yeah, I ask, and some patients are so deeply hurt that it almost invites that conversation. Mm-hmm. And some people don't have traditional beliefs, and so then we don't pursue that much further. But some people do, mm-hmm. And they really respond to having those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think the reason I ask you that is just as providers, in general, I think sometimes people are reluctant to ask our community members what their beliefs are, but I think it's really healthy to do so and ask what they follow traditions. Now you work in the clinic now, or for the clinic as well, Ricky, providing some traditional medicine. What does that look like? Do you get a call once a week, a couple times a week, or?
It's much more than a couple times a week. It's a couple times a day. Sometimes it's a couple times an hour. The need for health in America, I think, is a real high right now. So I think that for us to be in Indigenous health, I think we have to be centered in who we are, mm-hmm. the difference between Native American, so-called, and also Indigenous. There are differences there, so I think that when we lump ourselves with the mainstream folks, that we oftentimes look at ourselves as the bottom rung constantly, and that can be really heavy on us as a collective mindset. So I think to center ourselves in this society is a good starting point.
So part of your health care then is reminding people of who they are and who they come from and our ways and the value of them?
Yes, because the values of America are different than the values of Indigenous America. A salient feature, again, of any society or any community is who gets honored. And in the values of the American culture, the ones that are getting honored are the ones that are, we certainly don't want our children to emulate their behaviors. So there's a difference there in the value system that brings about either wellness or some struggles. So our values are completely, and the ones that we hold up as in our society, in our communities, are those that serve the people and give of themselves and sacrifice. And so those are the ones that we hold up. And unfortunately, we're trying to nurture the younger generation to come and give us a helping hand. Many are stepping up, so that's a beautiful thing. We're grasping a lot of the things that are needed in Indigenous health, and particularly language, ceremonies, and the way of treating one another and things, natural law and spiritual law. So those things there are, but we need more, because the unhealthy ways that we're compelled to go towards from the social forces in America, such as the media and such, our youth are pushed towards those, holding those ones up with the kind of mischievous behaviors and things like that. So we want to change that. And that's all built through relationships. And so that's why we strive to have a welcoming, genuine atmosphere so that the folks show up.
Thank you. Do you want to add something to that?
There's a direct correlation, and research will back that up, between the sense of self and identity, belonging. All of this is deeply connected to both our physical and our emotional health. So when we think about the way in which this is all interconnected, it's really important that we do understand who we are. It's really important that we feel okay about who we are, that we can stand out here and walk out here in the world and feel as if we have a place. It's when we don't that then gets internalized, and then it does things to our health. I mean, we're talking high blood pressure, we're talking heart disease, there are a number of things, eating disorders, there's a number of things that come about as a result of not being centered in who you are as a human being or as a cultural being.
And the reason that even comes up is that our ways and who we are were pushed aside so that it could be replaced with non-native ways. So that's why there's a struggle for many of the people in our community, right? Right. Anything to add to this, Arnie?
Well, our ceremonies weren't even legal until 1978. And so a lot of traditional healing kind of went underground and happened in relative darkness. And when people come to see me, sometimes they might be seeing a traditional provider, and they would never volunteer that. And they would certainly never volunteer it to somebody that's not native. And I do ask about that, because I don't want somebody to have to choose between me and somebody that's helping them from a traditional standpoint. I might not always be the best choice, and I don't want them to have to choose. They should be able to access both. If they come to see me, they have a reason for that, and we need to respond to that reason.
One of our audience members, the people watching tonight, want to know what types of traditional medicine do the panelists incorporate into their daily practice. So they're asking more various. I think it's hard for people to understand this. So can you give an example of something that you incorporate into your daily practice, or do you?
Oh, I do. So when I get up in the morning, it doesn't matter what day it is, you know, what I have, if I've got hospital things to do. If the first thing I do is I go out and I have a ceremony, and I put tobacco out. And tobacco, it seems like, why would a physician be doing anything with tobacco? And it's a sacrament. It's a thing that we use for, you know, when I put that out, it takes me a long time. I include people who have cancers, people who need help, people who are struggling, people who I know that you just got painted into the corners of life and can't get out. And a little girl who's got seizures, somebody I just found out has cancer, somebody's dad with cancer, and when I do all those things in the morning, I start out with gratitude, and then the whole day follows from there, and I start with enough gratitude that it lasts the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
You, Roxanne, what do you incorporate into your?
Oh gosh,
daily
I'm like
ritual?
Arnie. There's not a morning. Well, that's not true. There are some mornings where I'm so busy, you know, and then the physical world kind of grabs me, and I do bypass. Mm-hmm. It's a very fast. Miigwech mani do, my tobacco goes down. Hey? Mm-hmm. But I like to pause with my tobacco. I even remind my grandson, binda kunjike, and he's got his tobacco. Hey, as we just pause to give thanks for our day. Maybe we have to think about something specific, but it's about being grateful. It's about remembering that I'm just a tiny little human being in the cosmos. You know, I'm just a tiny little speck. I barely even am on the scale of being recognizable. You know, and so it starts my day off in thinking that way. It also helps me to slow down so that I'm not in such a hurry. Mm-hmm. This world is hard. It makes us want to hurry and rush, and you know, so to slow down
And connect.
Mm-hmm.
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 How about you, Ricky?
For me, I think it's quiet time. I think is the most thing that's needed to center ourselves in the day, to get up early, to greet the sun. Natural law, to see even before the sun comes up, to be alert and ready. So we have to think about our day ahead. And I think because as the day gets going and the cars start moving to work and to and fro, I think that there's so much buzz in society that we feel a numbness to it. There's too much noise, there's too much side stuff going on. You know, unless we have something in place that we're centered ourselves and what we have our needs met for ourselves, our family, and then the community. I think then we have we can go along through the day in a good way.
Mm-hmm. And it's that little pause too. See, one thing that is here, but it isn't being said directly, is the fact that it's in the natural world, that this is where our calm comes from. It's in the natural world. This is where we pause and put our tobacco out. This is where we find that quiet, eh? It's in the natural world. I'm so grateful for my yard. I've got an amazing yard that I can step out into, eh? I overlook Lake Superior. I have an opportunity to pause and just look at her and talk to her. You know, so I mean, it's in the natural world that we find this really strong feeling of equilibrium, if you will. You know, that all of a sudden just kind of being back on balance again. Yeah.
Thank you for that. There's this question I'm going to direct to you, Arnie, as someone who travels back and forth between, well, you know, both forms of medicine, but how do you treat severe diabetes in Indigenous patients? I'm going to start with you, but I want to ask if you two have anything to add to it as well.
Well, certainly diabetes has hit us pretty hard, and it's a metabolic problem, and blood sugars. I don't want to get myself in trouble here. I had a patient who would drink maple syrup right out of the refrigerator, and always thought that wouldn't raise his blood sugar, but he wouldn't check his blood sugar. And even though it's a better sugar, it's a better carbohydrate, it's a better everything, there's still sugar in it, and sometimes it just takes a while. People are skeptical, and people are a lot of people don't want to start with medicines, so starting with diet and exercise and being outside and talking about nature and talking about going outside and going for a walk and being outside and being present. Sometimes it does take a while, and I don't know that I approach it necessarily from a traditional perspective that much.
It's hard to, isn't it, when it's not a traditional disease? I
Right.
mean, we got this way, he was following non-traditional ways, right? The diet certainly isn't traditional. That gets many of us to this state where our pancreas is challenged and our body's challenged. So it's hard. Would you add anything to that, Roxanne?
I think that's the biggest part of it, is that it's not something that we can just use traditional medicines for, because it is a metabolic thing. I think there are some medicines out there that might be able to work with it. Not anything that I'm familiar with. I know some medicine people up in Canada that really are adept at those medicines, those natural medicines. But I lean a little bit towards, Arnie too, is that, there are some things that really, these are things that we need to treat from a medical place. Yeah.
Anything different you'd add?
Well, I think there's a two-pronged approach to that, Western medicine and specifically traditional ways. As you bring them together, they complement one another. For us as Indigenous peoples, we want to return to the ways that were before all these sicknesses came, Mary, the diabetes and things that afflicted us. And that means to be the wild animals, but most of the mammals, if you will, on Earth are chickens and turkeys and pigs and the domesticated ones. We're talking about the limited amounts of wild meats, wild berries, wild rice, and things from the garden directly from our Mother Earth. So it's a return to those nutritious ways of living, along with proper sleep, a proper exercise, and so a holistic way of looking at things so that we can be even the people that we associate with. Because I think in America, there is design to get people addicted to, whether it's sugar, whether it's whatever, salt or whatever. The scientists are it's an addicted society. So there's profit in addiction. There's profit in sickness. There's profit in death. So we're a profit-driven economy. So it makes sense. So that's why we got to center ourselves in that world and say, what do I need to do to navigate through that very sick society?
Arnie, someone's writing in and says, I'm a student hoping to go to medical school. What can practitioners of Western medicine learn from traditional medicine?
I think they can learn a lot. I think, just listening to Ricky and Roxanne talking about centering and talking about gratitude and talking about looking at life from a different perspective and looking at we're a community and we're parts of a community and we're just, when we go outside, and an elder that has passed on sat me down and made sure that he wanted me to know that when I go outside I should look and listen to everything out there, because everything's trying to tell me something. And I do that. So when I go out in the morning, I do look and listen. And I've been going out in the mornings for 60 plus years. And Monday I saw stars. I mean, it's the same stars, but they were so bright. And I've seen, in the mornings, I've seen the tops of the trees when the light is hitting them before the sunlight gets down to where I am, and how bright they are. And one morning I saw just a drop of dew way up high in a leaf it was like a diamond. I mean, I've never seen anything that sparkly and that prismatic and all the colors. And you need to look for those things, and they're there. And and you need to realize that we are just a part of that, and that we have a connection with all those things, but we have a connection to each other.
Right.
And that we share our gifts, and that that we listen to Ricky and Roxanne and people who want to center us back where we should be.
I'll never forget, Ricky, you telling the students and me one time in a class about the wind blowing on us being a form of smudging and cleaning as well. That was pretty powerful. Roxanne, someone wants to know, what are some of the natural flowers of plants, and do physicians prescribe pharmaceuticals on top of that? Is that okay? And I'm not, just answer what you feel like you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I think that there is a way to blend, but I think that we have to always be careful of that too. It's like at one point in time somebody had swamp tea, mushkigo bug, and they drank like a gallon of it and then wondered why they got a bladder infection. Well, duh, do you take a whole bottle of aspirin and eat the whole bottle for a headache? So I mean, there's moderation to that. But I think that our physicians need to know what it is that you're using as well. What else do you do? What other medicines are you using? Are you working with a spiritual healer? Are you working with a traditional medicine? So that you have a better idea of what mixes well with what, and how much are you getting of something?
Right.
So I think they can work together.
And we ask not for judgment, but so that we know what other medications we're giving on top of it.
Right.
And how they'll run together.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that, Arnie or
No,
Ricky?
I absolutely think that working together is the right way to do things.
And it seems like it's being accepted more and more, which is really nice. Good. We always get this question, and it's a good one, but Ricky, what would you say? How can I support my local Indigenous community?
Support is to be in relationship, because you got to be talking, you've got to be not texting, not emailing, you got to be face to face, you got to be in the same room, and that's genuine relationships and things. So I think that's where the power is at, in relationships, because then we can feel the pulse of the sickness, the wellness, to share the burdens, also share the happiness. So everything comes down to relationships. And then the young ones sometimes don't know what to say or what to do, and oftentimes we don't either. But the thing is to be there, bring your spirit, bring yourself, and things begin to happen. And always the native will always have the tobacco that leads the way, and so those things are first and foremost.
Roxanne, people look, I'll tell them that, I'll remind people, you have to be in relationship, you have to build relationships with our community, and people still wonder how to do that. They think, okay, do I go to a powwow? What would you advise for people who still don't quite know how to get there?
Gosh, there are so many places beyond powwows. I mean, you can come to the tribal college for an event. Go out to the Fond du Lac Band for events that they have. There's flyers all over the place. Every clinic in town has flyers posted for events that are coming up. Go sit, go watch, go listen. And then while you're there, is it okay if I ask you about, ask to ask? Yeah. Be willing to ask the questions. Yeah. Those relationships aren't going to develop just simply by sitting there. You have to actually engage them.
Yeah, some humble curiosity.
Yeah. And I think that's one of my favorite tools, ask to ask. Is it okay if I ask you about, and then whatever it is, because that way they can say no.
You agree?
Oh, absolutely agree. And learning language. Ricky teaches language, and I always have excuses for not making it to those language tables. But those are, just learning words and some phrases, and listening to somebody that is teaching and goes off on a tangent a little bit and tells a story in the process. That's the way we're supposed to learn. That's the way we learned, way back when. And our ancestors were they knew that there would come a time when our language would be taken away, when boarding schools would happen, when ceremonies would be illegal, and they put our lessons right in the language itself. And if you learn to speak and even just learn some words, there are things in there that don't happen in English.
Yeah, beautifully said, Miigwech. So inviting people in to have community with us.
Compassionate inquiry.
I love that. Yeah, compassionate inquiry. Great. I want to thank our panelists, Ricky Defoe, Roxanne DeLille, and Dr. Arnie Vigno, and our medical student volunteers, Justin Barron, Ora Raymond, and Sophie Wang. We'll be off next week due to Thanksgiving. Please join Dr. Peter Nalen in 2 weeks for a program on men's health, prostate, bladder, and kidney problems, when his panelists will be Dr. Nick Johnson, Dr. Benjamin Marsh, and Dr. John Wood. Thank you for watching, and good night.
They'd be good.